Welcome to ThoughtGrid. Like and subscribe for more chilling stories. In the age of digital convenience, rideshare apps have revolutionized the way we travel. With just a few taps on our phones, we can summon a stranger to pick us up and take us wherever we need to go. It's efficient, it's convenient, and for the most part, it's safe. But beneath the veneer of technological progress lies a darker reality. When you step into a stranger's car, you're placing your trust in someone you've never met. Someone whose background you know nothing about. Someone who could be harboring intentions far more sinister than simply getting you from point A to point B. These aren't just tales of rude drivers or uncomfortable conversations. These are accounts from individuals who found themselves trapped in a nightmare on wheels. Stories that prove some rides are far more dangerous than any destination. They are real, and they happened because someone just needed a ride. Story 1. The Driver Who Knew Too Much. This first chilling account comes from a young woman named Jessica, a marketing professional who frequently used rideshare apps for her daily commute in a bustling metropolitan city. This incident occurred on a cold November evening in 2019, after Jessica had worked late at her office and needed a ride home to her apartment across town. She was exhausted, looking forward to a quiet evening, and didn't think twice about requesting her usual ride. The driver who accepted her request was named Marcus. According to the app, his profile showed a decent rating and a relatively new sedan. Jessica waited outside her office building, watching the GPS tracker as Marcus approached. When he arrived, she noticed the car was slightly different from what was shown in the app, older, with tinted windows that made it difficult to see inside. But the license plate matched, and Marcus confirmed her name when she approached the vehicle. Jessica got into the back seat, as was her habit, and gave Marcus her address. He seemed friendly enough, making small talk about the weather and the traffic. But as they drove, Jessica began to notice something unsettling. Marcus seemed to know an unusual amount about her routine. He mentioned that she worked late, often that she usually took rides around this time, and that she lived alone in her apartment. Jessica initially thought he was just being observant, perhaps remembering her from previous rides, though she didn't recall ever having him as a driver before. As they continued through the city, Marcus began to share more specific details. He knew the name of the coffee shop she frequented in the mornings, the gym she went to on weekends, and even the fact that she had recently broken up with her boyfriend. Jessica's blood ran cold. She had never shared any of this information with any rideshare driver. She tried to rationalize it. Perhaps he had overheard her phone conversations during previous rides. Or maybe he was just making lucky guesses. But the specificity of his knowledge was deeply unsettling. The conversation took an even more disturbing turn when Marcus began to describe her apartment building in detail. He knew which floor she lived on, the color of her front door, and even mentioned the small potted plant she kept on her balcony. Jessica's heart began to race. She realized that Marcus hadn't just been her driver before. He had been watching her, stalking her, learning her patterns, her habits, her life. Jessica tried to remain calm, not wanting to provoke him. She pretended to receive an urgent phone call, hoping to create a distraction and perhaps alert someone to her situation, but Marcus seemed to see through her ruse. He began to drive more erratically, taking turns that didn't lead toward her apartment. When Jessica questioned the route, Marcus simply smiled in the rearview mirror and said, "Don't worry, I know a shortcut." The shortcut led them into an industrial area on the outskirts of the city, a place Jessica had never been before. The streets were dark, lined with abandoned warehouses and empty lots. Jessica's panic reached a crescendo. She demanded that Marcus stop the car and let her out, but he ignored her pleas. Instead, he began to talk about how he had been getting to know her over the past few months, how he had been taking care of her without her knowledge. Marcus revealed that he had been deliberately accepting her ride requests, sometimes even declining other fares to ensure he would be available when she needed a ride. He had been following her, learning her schedule, and building what he called a relationship with her, even though Jessica had been completely unaware of his existence. He spoke about her as if they were intimate friends, describing her daily activities with a disturbing level of detail and affection. The climax of Jessica's ordeal came when Marcus pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse. He turned off the engine and turned around to face her, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. He told Jessica that he had prepared a special place for them, somewhere they could get to know each other better. Jessica realized that this had been his plan all along, to lure her to this isolated location where no one would hear her scream. In a moment of desperation, Jessica managed to unlock the car door and bolt from the vehicle. She ran into the darkness, her high heels clicking against the asphalt, Marcus's shouts echoing behind her. She hid behind a dumpster, her heart pounding as she heard Marcus searching for her, calling her name in a sing-song voice that made her skin crawl. She managed to call 911 from her phone, whispering her location to the dispatcher. The police arrived within minutes, but Marcus was gone. They found his abandoned car in the parking lot, but there was no sign of him. The vehicle was registered under a false name, and the rideshare account had been created with stolen identity information. Jessica was taken to the hospital for evaluation and then to the police station to file a report. The investigation revealed that Marcus had been using the rideshare platform to target multiple women, learning their routines and stalking them under the guise of being their driver. Jessica never used a rideshare app again. She moved to a different city, changed her phone number, and took extensive precautions to protect her privacy. She still has nightmares about that night, about Marcus's voice calling her name in the darkness, about the realization that someone had been watching her for months without her knowledge. She knows now that the convenience of rideshare apps comes with a hidden cost, the vulnerability of placing your trust in a complete stranger, someone who might see you not as a passenger, but as prey. Story 2. The Midnight Passenger. This next disturbing account comes from a rideshare driver named David, a part-time driver who worked nights to supplement his income from his day job. David had been driving for various rideshare platforms for over 2 years and had encountered his fair share of unusual passengers, drunk college students, overly talkative businessmen, and the occasional person who seemed to be running from something. But nothing had prepared him for the passenger he picked up on a foggy October night in 2020. The ride request came in around 2:30 a.m. from a location in a residential neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The pickup address was for a house on a quiet, tree-lined street, and the destination was listed as the city's main hospital. David assumed it was a medical emergency. Perhaps someone needed to visit a sick relative or had a late-night medical appointment. He accepted the ride and drove through the empty streets toward the pickup location. When David arrived at the address, he found himself in front of a modest 2-story house. The windows were dark and there was no sign of activity. He waited for a few minutes, checking his phone to make sure he was at the correct location. Just as he was about to call the passenger, a figure emerged from the shadows beside the house. It was a woman, probably in her 30s, wearing a long dark coat and carrying a small suitcase. She moved slowly, almost hesitantly toward the car. The woman got into the back seat without saying a word. David greeted her and confirmed the destination, the hospital, but she didn't respond. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror and noticed that she was staring straight ahead, her face pale and expressionless. Her hair was disheveled, and there was something unsettling about her appearance, though David couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. As they drove through the quiet streets, David tried to make conversation, asking if she was okay or if there was an emergency. The woman remained silent, her gaze fixed on something beyond the windshield. David began to feel uncomfortable. The silence in the car was oppressive, and there was a strange, cold atmosphere that seemed to emanate from his passenger. He turned up the heat, but the chill persisted. About halfway to the hospital, David noticed something that made his blood run cold. In the rearview mirror, he could see that the woman was no longer alone in the back seat. There was another figure sitting beside her, a man in a dark suit, his face obscured by shadows. David's heart skipped a beat. He was certain that only one passenger had gotten into his car. He glanced over his shoulder, but when he looked back, the man was gone. Only the woman remained, still staring straight ahead with that same vacant expression. David tried to rationalize what he had seen. Perhaps it was a trick of the light, or maybe he was more tired than he realized. But as they continued toward the hospital, the strange occurrences escalated. The temperature in the car seemed to drop even further despite the heater running at full blast. David could see his breath in the cold air, and frost began to form on the inside of the windows. The radio, which had been playing soft music, began to emit static, and occasionally David could hear faint voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize. The woman in the back seat began to change. Her pale complexion grew even more ashen, and dark circles appeared under her eyes. Her breathing became shallow and labored, and David could hear a faint, wet, rattling sound with each exhale. He asked if she needed medical attention, if he should call an ambulance, but she still didn't respond. Instead, she slowly turned her head toward him, and David saw her eyes in the rearview mirror. They were completely black, devoid of any white or color, like two dark voids staring back at him. David's hands began to shake on the steering wheel. He wanted to stop the car, to get out and run, but something compelled him to continue driving. It was as if he was no longer in control of his own actions, as if some unseen force was guiding the vehicle toward its destination. The streets around them seemed to change, becoming unfamiliar despite David's years of driving in the city. The buildings looked older, more decrepit, and the streetlights cast long, twisted shadows that seemed to move independently of their sources. As they approached the hospital, David noticed that the building looked different from how he remembered it. The modern facade had been replaced by an older, more Gothic structure with tall, narrow windows and crumbling stonework. The parking lot was empty, and there were no lights visible in any of the windows. It looked more like an abandoned asylum than a functioning medical facility. The woman in the back seat finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for bringing me home," she said, her words carrying a strange, echoing quality that seemed to reverberate through the car. David turned around to look at her directly, but the back seat was empty. The woman was gone, as if she had never been there at all. The suitcase he had been carrying was also nowhere to be seen. David sat in the empty car, his heart pounding, trying to process what had just happened. He checked the Rideshare app on his phone, but there was no record of the ride. No pickup, no destination, no passenger. It was as if the entire experience had been erased from the digital record. He drove home in a daze, unable to shake the feeling that he had been part of something far beyond his understanding. The next day, David did some research on the address where he had picked up the woman. He discovered that the house had been the site of a tragic incident several years earlier. A woman matching the description of his passenger had died there under mysterious circumstances, and her body had been taken to the old city hospital, the same building that had been demolished and replaced by the modern facility David was familiar with. The woman had never made it to the hospital alive. David quit driving for rideshare apps immediately after that night. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been used as a conduit for something supernatural, that he had unknowingly helped a lost soul complete an unfinished journey. He still drives past that residential neighborhood sometimes, and he always feels a chill when he sees the house where he picked up his mysterious passenger. He knows now that some rides don't end when you reach your destination, and some passengers are traveling to places that exist beyond the realm of the living. Story 3. The Ghost in the Back Seat. Our final chilling account comes from a young woman named Emily, a college student who relied heavily on rideshare apps to get around her city, especially late at night, after studying or working her part-time job. This incident occurred on a rainy Tuesday night in the spring of 2021, when Emily requested a ride home from the university library. The driver, whose name was listed as Sarah, arrived promptly in a clean white SUV. Emily, tired and eager to get home, quickly hopped into the back seat. She noticed that the car was unusually cold, despite the warm spring rain outside. She also noticed a faint, sweet scent, like old flowers, that seemed to permeate the vehicle. She dismissed it as a lingering air freshener. As they drove, Emily pulled out her phone to check her social media. She glanced up briefly and saw Sarah, the driver, in the rearview mirror. Sarah was staring straight ahead, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes seemed to lack any real depth, like two dark, empty pools. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine, but she attributed it to the cold in the car. Then, Emily noticed something else in the rearview mirror. In the very back of the SUV, in the third row of seats, She saw a faint, shimmering outline of a figure. It was indistinct, almost transparent, but it was definitely there. It looked like a young woman, with long, dark hair, wearing a light-colored dress. The figure was sitting perfectly still, facing forward, its head slightly tilted. Emily blinked, and the figure seemed to flicker, almost disappearing, then reappearing. Emily's heart began to pound. She tried to tell herself it was just a reflection, or her tired eyes playing tricks on her. But the figure was too clear, too distinct to be a mere illusion. She tried to get a better look, but the angle of the rear-view mirror made it difficult. She decided to try and engage Sarah in conversation, hoping to break the unsettling silence and perhaps get some answers. "It's really cold in here, isn't it?" Emily asked, her voice a little shaky. Sarah didn't respond. She didn't even flinch. Her gaze remained fixed on the road ahead, her hands still gripping the wheel tightly. Emily tried again, a little louder this time. "Sarah, are you okay? The car is freezing." Still no response. It was as if Sarah hadn't heard her at all. Emily's fear began to escalate. She looked back at the rearview mirror, and the figure in the back was still there, now seeming a little more solid, a little more defined. And then, the figure slowly turned its head. Its eyes, though still indistinct, seemed to be looking directly at Emily. A profound sense of sadness and despair emanated from the figure, a silent plea for help that seemed to pierce Emily's very soul. The car suddenly swerved, narrowly missing a parked car. Emily cried out, but Sarah remained impassive, her face still pale and expressionless. The sweet, floral scent in the car grew stronger, almost overwhelming, and Emily realized it wasn't an air freshener. It was the smell of death, of decay, of something long buried. The climax of Emily's terrifying ride came when they reached her apartment building. Sarah pulled up to the curb, but didn't stop the car. She just slowed down, her eyes still fixed on the road ahead. Emily, desperate to escape, fumbled with the door handle. She finally managed to open it and practically fell out of the car, landing on the wet pavement. She scrambled to her feet and looked back at the SUV. Sarah was still sitting there, motionless, staring straight ahead. And in the back seat, the faint, shimmering figure of the young woman was now sitting directly behind Sarah, its arms wrapped around her, its head resting on her shoulder. And then, the figure slowly raised its hand and waved at Emily, a gesture of chilling finality. The SUV then slowly drove away. They found no record of a rideshare driver named Sarah with a white SUV matching Emily's description. The rideshare app showed that Emily's ride had been canceled just minutes after she requested it, and no driver had ever accepted it. Emily never used a rideshare app again. She still has nightmares about the cold car, the sweet floral scent, and the ghostly figure in the back seat. She never found out who Sarah was, or who the ghost was, or why they were together. But she knows, with a chilling certainty, that some rides are not just about getting from one place to another, and some drivers are not just people. And sometimes, when you step into a stranger's car, you might be stepping into a journey that transcends the boundaries of life and death. Conclusion. These three accounts, drawn from the chilling realities of rideshare experiences, serve as a stark reminder that even in our modern, connected world, danger can lurk in the most unexpected places. Each story, unique in its manifestation, shares a common thread: the profound vulnerability of placing your trust in a complete stranger, someone whose intentions you cannot know, someone whose past you cannot see. Jessica learned that the convenience of rideshare apps can be exploited by predators who use the platform to stalk and terrorize their victims. Her experience with Marcus, the driver who knew too much, shattered her sense of security and left her with a chilling understanding that some people see rideshare passengers not as customers, but as prey. David discovered that some passengers are not of this world, that the line between the living and the dead can blur in the confined space of a moving vehicle. His encounter with the midnight passenger left him questioning the very nature of reality and his role as an unwitting conduit for the supernatural. And Emily's terrifying ride with Sarah and the ghostly figure in the back seat revealed that some journeys transcend the boundaries of life and death, that some drivers are carrying passengers from realms beyond our understanding. Her experience serves as a chilling reminder that when you step into a stranger's car, you might be stepping into a story that began long before you arrived and will continue long after you leave. These narratives are not mere fiction. They are echoes of real incidents, whispers from the dark corners of our interconnected world. They remind us that the trust we place in technology, in algorithms, in the assumption that a verified profile equals a safe ride, can be profoundly misplaced. The rideshare horror stories serve as a powerful cautionary tale, urging us to remain vigilant, to trust our instincts, and to remember that behind every profile picture and star rating is a human being whose true nature remains hidden until it's too late. The chilling reality of rideshare horror stories lies in their accessibility. Unlike tales of haunted houses or remote locations, these incidents can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. The very convenience that makes rideshare apps so appealing, the ability to summon a ride with just a few taps on your phone, also creates a vulnerability that can be exploited by those with malicious intent. The anonymity of the platform, while providing a sense of security through ratings and verification, can also be a mask for predators and a gateway for the unexplained. These stories serve as a reminder that in our rush to embrace technological convenience, we must not forget the fundamental importance of personal safety and situational awareness. They teach us that some risks cannot be mitigated by algorithms or star ratings, and that the most dangerous encounters often begin with the most innocent of requests. I need a ride. In the end, these tales are more than just horror stories. They are warnings. They remind us that the world is full of mysteries, some beautiful, some terrifying, and that our understanding of safety and security is far more fragile than we often believe. Whether you're a passenger seeking a ride or a driver accepting a fare, these stories serve as a chilling reminder that some journeys are far more dangerous than any destination, and some encounters will haunt you long after the ride is over. So the next time you request a ride or accept a passenger, remember Jessica, David, and Emily. Remember that behind every transaction is a human story, and not all of those stories have happy endings. Because in the world of rideshare apps, where strangers become temporary companions in the confined space of a moving vehicle, the line between convenience and catastrophe can be terrifyingly thin. The evolution of rideshare technology has fundamentally changed how we navigate our cities and our lives. What began as a simple solution to transportation challenges has become a complex ecosystem where millions of strangers interact daily, creating countless opportunities for both connection and danger. The stories of Jessica, David, and Emily represent just a fraction of the incidents that occur within this vast network of human interaction. Reminders that technology, no matter how advanced, cannot eliminate the fundamental unpredictability of human nature. The psychological impact of these experiences extends far beyond the immediate terror of the moment. Victims of rideshare horror often struggle with long-term effects, hypervigilance, anxiety about transportation, and a profound loss of trust in both technology and strangers. The very convenience that once made their lives easier becomes a source of fear and paranoia. They find themselves scrutinizing every driver photo, memorizing license plates, and sharing their location with multiple contacts. Precautions that, while sensible, serve as constant reminders of their vulnerability. For drivers like David, the experience of encountering something beyond explanation while on duty creates a unique form of trauma. They must grapple not only with the immediate fear of the supernatural encounter, but also with the isolation that comes from having an experience that others dismiss as impossible. The rideshare platform, designed to connect people and facilitate safe transportation, becomes a conduit for encounters that challenge our understanding of reality itself. These stories also highlight the limitations of the safety measures built into rideshare platforms. While GPS tracking, driver verification, and rating systems provide some level of security, they cannot account for the human elements that make these encounters so terrifying. A high rating cannot predict when a driver will reveal their true intentions, and a verified identity cannot prevent supernatural encounters that exist outside the realm of digital verification. The ripple effects of these incidents extend beyond the immediate victims. They create a climate of fear and suspicion that affects the entire rideshare community. Passengers become more cautious, drivers become more wary, and the trust that forms the foundation of the sharing economy begins to erode. Each horror story shared online, each warning passed between friends, contributes to a growing awareness that the convenience of rideshare apps comes with risks that cannot be entirely eliminated. Yet, despite these dangers, millions of people continue to use rideshare services daily, a testament to both the necessity of the service and our remarkable ability to rationalize risk. We tell ourselves that these incidents are rare, that they happen to other people, that we would recognize the warning signs and react differently. But the truth is that horror can strike anyone, at any time, in any vehicle, and our ability to predict or prevent it is far more limited than we care to admit. The stories of Jessica, David, and Emily serve as more than just cautionary tales. They are reminders of our shared humanity and vulnerability. In a world increasingly mediated by technology, where human interaction is often reduced to ratings and reviews, these accounts force us to confront the reality that behind every profile is a complex human being with their own motivations, fears, and secrets. Some of those secrets are harmless, others are dangerous, and a few transcend our understanding of what is possible in this world. As we continue to navigate the evolving landscape of transportation technology, these stories remind us that progress and convenience should never come at the expense of vigilance and common sense. They teach us that while we cannot eliminate all risks, we can remain aware of them, prepare for them, and most importantly, trust our instincts when something feels wrong. Because in the end, no app, no algorithm, and no amount of technological innovation can replace the fundamental importance of personal safety and situational awareness.